The following program is a work of fiction intended to educate and astonish the YouTube community. It has been carefully edited to conform to all YouTube guidelines, and any resemblance to any real contests, prizes, phone contacts, websites, or historical figures is purely coincidental.
Previously on Seattle Rock Today.
This has been the Swami talk. You will receive your bill in the mail.
Well, Mr. Parker, do you think it worked?
Nah, that's bullshit. Swami's got no idea what my audience wants. I know what my audience wants. They want Big Daddy.
Welcome back to Seattle Rock Today. To all you viewers out there, I'm Gary Jean, hosting the show tonight because, well, your host, Jackson Parker, is still out of town. He's on vacation somewhere in the Mediterranean. I've been told he's very comfortable right now, which is probably very good. Very comfortable with Dusty Sterling. Comfortable, Dusty Sterling. Okay. I think you understand, folks. I think you understand that Jackson's in a good spot. But when he comes back, hopefully he'll be back for the next show. Well, we're hoping for anyway. But that's okay. He's not here tonight, but we have a great guest for you. If you watched our last show, we had Paul Flum. And Paul Flum said that his co-producer of this TV series, I'm Carlos Now, the hottest show on YouTube that you guys just keep sending us messages about, that Lawrence Johns, the co-producer of I'm Carlos Now, is here in the studio. And he has been in Seattle and around Washington promoting his new book called The Western Way. And we will have Lawrence here on the show. Right now, we want to show you a clip of Lawrence as he also played, not only was he a producer of I'm Carlos Now, but he also played the role of Frank Glendover, the lead actor in the series. And here in this scene you're about to see is from we have it here. It's episode, Eileen? It's episode 2, right? Okay. Episode 2, The Three Names of Lenin. Here's a scene of Frank Glendover and Ilyich Ramírez meeting on the train tracks of the world.
Ilyich!
What? Where have you been, my brother?
We meet again like this on the train tracks of the world.
Comrade,
What is new?
perhaps you've heard of my incarceration and my recent release. But the fact is,
I heard you escaped, Ilyich.
I was never the prisoner. They were the prisoners.
Ah, yes.
You may have noticed some of my new creations in the world of chaos.
You remember Professor Smirin from Patrice Malone?
Yeah, of course,
he
of
died.
course.
He died recently. But
I never liked him.
I never liked him.
He never held his liquor, his women.
The struggle.
look-
So tell me, my friend, what is going on with these groups?
Here's what's happening. Once again, chaos reigns supreme.
Yes.
But with our control. Control
But
chaos.
the money, you have the money. How did you teach them the money?
The money comes like the wind, like the water to me, to
Yes.
Ilyich.
Yes.
But my name is no longer Ilyich.
What, you changed your name?
I'm Carlos now,
You're Carlos now.
the Jackal.
The Jackal.
I come and I go, I disappear, and I own the world as we know it.
Welcome back, Seattle Rock Today here on KRAG 93.93 FM. And tonight in our studio we have Lawrence Johns. Thank you, Lawrence, for coming on. Lawrence Johns is the writer of 3 books of poetry, Love and Hate, Beyond Exile, The Western Way. He's also, you all know him, of course, as producer and actor in the hot YouTube series, I'm Carlos Now. And he's in Seattle to promote his new book, The Western Way. Welcome to KRAG, Lawrence Johns. Thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit what's going on your trip here to Seattle.
It's a pleasure to be here, Gary. Well, I was invited back by the Art Museum, and I'll be having a little get-together, a little poetry reading, maybe a little performance at the Broken Cup, which is the coffee shop in the basement of the Seattle Art Museum. And I'm currently staying in, because of the traffic, I'm staying at, every time I come to Seattle, I have a room waiting for me on top of Tweed's restaurant in North Bend.
North Bend.
And I have, for breakfast every morning, a nice big slice of their cherry pie. World famous, unbelievable.
The rhubarb is good as well. Cherry and rhubarb, excellent choices there. Been into North Bend, been to Seattle, promoting your book. Been to the golf course. How are the links? Are you treating you well?
Oh, it's the short game could use a little work, but I think it's coming along. It's always great to be out in the Pacific Northwest. The air is fantastic.
Walking the course, getting all muddy on these green emerald tracks. A little different from your California golfing days, I guess. Right?
Yes, well, golf is it's a lifetime passion.
Let's get into a little bit of the poetry, because that's why we have a poet here. We don't normally have a poet on our show very often, and so it's great to get the insight from someone. And let's talk about Love and Hate. And Love and Hate was the first book that you wrote, and it was quite a distance of time from the events of the late 1960s, and I'm sure our viewers are familiar with Summer of Love and all. You saw a lot of this in I'm Carlos Now anyway in the timeline. But this book did not come together until much later. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right, Gary. It took me probably over 40 years to figure out what actually happened. And there are a lot of false narratives, of course, about what happened. And my tale follows the small group called the Diggers in Haight-Ashbury in a very short period of time. Between 1967 and 1968, and the Diggers, they were started as a social action group, but they really started as street theater. And their idea was to provide, it was a calamity in Haight-Ashbury, an absolute calamity, because of media hype, and it was a nasty part of San Francisco. But young girls and young men all over the country ran away from home to go to San Francisco. And what they found was one of the foulest cesspools on the West Coast. full of drug dealers and pimps, and oh, it was horrible. So the Diggers set up a place where these runaways could have a free place to crash and sleep, free food, free clothes, free drugs at the free clinic. And the concept was that everything should be free, everything, that they would transform somehow all of American society into something that was free. They were originally traced to a 17th century English cult called the Diggers.
The Diggers, right.
Who basically took over a large estate in rural England and said, no, there's no private property. They were squatters in a larger sense. So the poem is an epic poem because it follows several characters as they go through the height of the love and the summer of love, and then as it all comes crashing down through some operations, some dark operations of COINTELPRO, the FBI, various informers, and it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy.
Your book has a lot more of the darker points that were not brought to light by historians. They seem to paint it as hippies and flowers, but there was a dark side. I mean, there was prostitution, there was police brutality, and a lot of bad things happened to these poor young kids traveling. And so much it's a homage, I guess, a little bit to these young.
Well, there was Gary, I'm glad you brought that up because revolution was in the air. Revolution was in the air. We were still in Vietnam, but I mean, people were getting stoned for having long hair or beads, or it created a lot of tension and antipathy from society. And whether it's what happened to Charlie Manson later on, the Laurel Canyon group in the '64, but the whole point was that from a historical point of view, the summer of love, or the whole idea of colors and love and sex and so forth, was systematically destroyed with strychnine and cops and so forth by the U.S. government.
Very topical too, and that you bring a lot of characters that we do know from that era. You know, referenced as the Technicolor van, the bus. You have Emmett Brogan. I believe you have Peter Berg. You also have Owsley, who figures prominently.
Oh, absolutely.
And Owsley's special acid that no one has been able to reproduce from that time. Speaking of which, that takes us to the first poem of your book, Love and Hate.
Yes.
That is about one of Owsley's acid trips. And what's that called again?
It's called Looking for the Perfect Rock. And this is where my poetic career, I was a poet when I was young, but I've spent many years traveling and not being able to write a single poem. So for all of you aspiring poets out there, be patient, let it happen. It started with the first line of the first poem of Love and Hate, and now we have 3 large epic poems afterwards. So, yes, I'm very proud of this first poem.
Eileen, we have it ready to go? Okay, we've got it. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was in season 2 of I'm Carlos Now, in the pilot episode of season 2 called Stay Low, Be Low. And the poem is the very first poem, the first words you see from Love and Hate, Looking for a Perfect Rock.
Looking for the perfect rock. Owsley's purple dome rushes hot, somewhere chill near Bonnie Doon, where the magnetic hum of Darby's Ridge brings the vortex history of Earth streaming to a tripper's eyes, and the search for the perfect rock starts with the one in your hand. Sammy examines by lemon morning light, drawn to the clear profiles of horned Alexander and laughing Einstein in the lichen. They carried the deeper memory of heavy metal birth in a star's demise, and the betrayal of time by sweet running distance. He sees volcanoes spew uncertainty, and continents lose their roots. But right where it starts to make sense, with the flash of human will, a legion of purple paisley acid worms invades the frame of reference, exploding into Arkrum's Amazons, all monster thighs, butts, hairy legs, and stormtrooper boots. So with a thick question mark hanging in a bubble of panic, Sammy finds himself running the trail, looking for new stories. He's taking a breather under black oak when the notion arrives, spread them out, just spread them out. Give them some air. Let's take a look. 10, 15, 18 faces, arranged in alluring horseshoe like the girls at Mustang Ranch. Surely the perfect rock is here. The world is poised to reveal itself today. A blue jay swoops down, 100, 1,000 blue jays, connecting each tree to a lucky synapse. High in the billowing clouds, he sees the smoky trains of consciousness, slow and stop in a silent whistle of attention. Every motion frozen by the intuition that says being can't really move at all. But now he feels the intense desire of each rock to go home. So shouting out constellations like train stations, he starts throwing his collection up through the Douglas firs, across the accumulator banks of dark matter, and back to the hydrogen dance of first becoming. He's saying his long goodbye to the Goethe granite when the first lava shudder shakes his spine. Looking closer, it's late afternoon. It's time to find the Ford van. Time to crank the starter, finger his black mustache, then ease downhill to the full rack saloon and his usual double shot of wild turkey. It signals the end of the trip. He's coaxing the heater, cajoling bald tires, thinking Billy turns cartoons into poems, like Warhol paints Maryland's and acid makes music of a mountain road. Time to hit the gravel parking lot, stumble into the full rack, and introduce his come down to the crowd. At the mahogany bar, he's pulling out a Jackson when the sound of one rock hitting the floor stops the roaring biker buzz. Every eye is upon him as he picks it up and drops it into his glass. He's thirsty, Sammy explains, as the chunk of quartz rattles and drains the bourbon. Spent the day up on Darby's Ridge, looking for a perfect mind. But now nobody cares. So he orders another drink and warms to the idea that when you really find something, it always finds you first.
Welcome back, Seattle Rock Today, KRAG FM 93.3. That was Looking for the Perfect Rock, a video that appears within I'm Carlos Now, but actually is a first poem as part of the epic poem Love and Hate by this gentleman, Lawrence Johns, tonight's guest on the show. And what I found when I perused your book there was the striking form you had of verse, the lines laid out on the page in the Celtic verse. Was that a style you had as a young writer, or is this something that came later in your career?
They came together at the same time. I mean, it's based on, say, old Welsh. The actual format is modern, but the intent is still, important events of the Welsh kings as related by Taliesin and other bards. So it's trying to tell important events. And this was an LSD trip in the woods around Bonnie Doon, and I still remember it, thanks to the poem.
Mm-hmm. And then the other characters all arrive at Haight from as young kids. I don't want to call them children, but young kids all the way across the country. Young girls. We had Sammy, Ricky, Feather, all arriving, and they all have their trials and tribulations as to what they were running away from. They found exile here in Haight-Ashbury until it came crashing down, which, without going deeply into that, leads us to beyond exile, which is what happens when this idyllic society that you were part of sort of falls apart. And what happens next?
Well, it was more than fall apart. It was, as I mentioned before, it was deliberately demolished and detonated. The American middle class and the political elite and the military-industrial complex, however you want to put it, could not stand to see people having fun. And it's not a new phenomenon, because throughout the Middle Ages, because of the Christian dogma, life was supposed to be a vale of tears, and you weren't supposed to have fun and be free and easy. And surprisingly enough, it took a poem by Lucretius, which was a poem about Epicurus, the Greek philosopher, in which he says, it's okay to be happy. It's okay to have sex. It's okay to have fun. You don't have to go around, with sin-laden guilt and be pointed towards some other world. You can have fun here.
Yeah, and you have the self-destruction actually coming from you could say a plant. In other words, one of the youngsters, Desi, was actually a plant in this
Right.
way you portray the events.
Well, all of those groups, the Diggers, there was an informer, but
Black Panthers were also
the Black Panthers were infiltrated. The anti-war movement was
Right.
all infiltrated. They were all infiltrated and destroyed from within. So
yeah, there's another great poem about Huey Newton in Love and Hate you should check out called Fruit Veil.
okay.
Brings more into
Yeah,
that.
no, I would like that one too. No, I think part of the idea, Gary, was for me in this epic poem was to carry forward or to document the feeling that revolution can still happen again. That yes, it was killed, but it can be reborn with the right kind of spirit. Have we seen that spirit arrive yet? No, we haven't. But it could in the future. And in fact, it does arrive again in the Western way. So in the literary or alternative universe of the poet, all those revolutionary ideas, the light of the revolution still shines.
And then one of the characters who survived, and not a lot did, folks, like we talked about, drugs and prostitution and murder and also rape and everything else. Not a lot did. But Frank Lendover was one of the central characters, of course, of Love and Hate. He survived, he went, of course, he moved to Haight-Ashbury, exiling from his other place in California. But now he has to go to exile from the States.
That's right. He has to leave America.
And then the second book of poetry, which is called Beyond Exile, the TV series you love, folks, I'm Carlos Now, has really presented the entire story of Frank Lendover from Beyond Exile from season 1 through season 3. And if you follow along with the TV series, you can track back to the book and see every word on the printed page, as it were. Now, one of the ideas, Mr. Johns, is that as Frank is finding his way in the New World, in the European world,
Right.
He meets with a friend, Toby, who was actually a student. They were both students at the GTU, Graduate Theological Union. And there's a discussion of the Greek Aristippus. And this is a very important launching point for the story in Texas Red.
And continues to be, yes. I mean, the Aristippus was a disciple of Plato. And his basic philosophy was moderation. And he epitomized that by a gentle rocking motion. So, I mean, we have all heard of this, the Greek wisdom of moderation. But the reason why it was Greek wisdom is because they couldn't do it. Because they were absolutely extreme in everything they did. And they self-imploded. So it's a wisdom from the Greeks that the Greeks themselves could not apply in any situation. So the gentle rocking motion as a metaphor means just, even if you are involved in the revolution, even if you're involved in great acts, do it in moderation. Because if you get into the extreme, then you will lose your mind, you'll go into hubris, and you'll become a pawn of the other side. That's how it goes.
Mm. And Frank Lendover at Haight-Ashbury got a little too close to a lot of this and got burnt a little bit, you could say. And then finding Aristippus a little bit later, probably in the 70s at this point, I'm going to guess, right?
Well, I think I didn't discover Aristippus, and I'd always known Aristippus, but it was applying the principle, to understanding the wisdom of the principle. Because you can learn things a long time ago as a child, and yet it takes many, many years to understand how true they are.
Well, Eileen, do we have his gentle rocking motion? We have it. Okay. This actually was such an impactful poem that became the title of the episode 3 of the series, the third episode in season 1. It's called A Gentle Rocking Motion, and this is the poem from the book Beyond Exile.
A gentle rocking motion. Socrates was scared shitless of exile, says Toby, wiping foam from his mustache.
Socrates was scared shitless of exile. But we're doing well. Big flat on the Rhine, 2 rich girlfriends, teaching English for $50 an hour at America House, beating the ponies at Bead and Spesh, meeting like this for cribbage in the best breweries of the world.
He was worried about identity. He believed in exile. You degenerate, collapse into barbarian superstitions of self and socialized compromises of virtue. Things are simultaneously too easy and too hard. You lose the muscle and music of self-examination. Since I left the States, I've lost that critical dimension. My identity's deflated, lapsed into Frank Harris or Henry Miller. In Berkeley or The Hate, I changed characters a dozen times a day. And I always felt Dionysus rushing to meet me in the mirror. But exile is Apollonian. I've lost the flexibility of my destiny. I'm reduced to action at a distance, to the word American.
But we're safe, Frank. No cops, no agents, plenty of girls and beer. Why can't we just dig it? Aristotle would agree. Let America stew in its crimes. Let Nixon have his dirty tricks. We're out now. We're free.
No, we're chained to the wind, strapped to beds of ball lightning, taken up in dark clouds of irrelevance. We're safe because they don't investigate or understand our deeper intent. We're Tom Thumbs, caricatures of our most accessible charms, cartoons in a battered travel bag, entertainers.
I think of it like this. From Thales to Epicurus, the Greek philosophers were looking for truth. But after 2 centuries of complex speculation, they decided on moderate pleasure. Aristippus called it a gentle rocking motion. And I agree with the Cyrene. Germany's my gentle rocker, Frank. I've been in Cologne over a year. I've never had so much fun or respect in my life. After graduating from GTU, I knew I couldn't become a pastor. My God was dead, burned by Decim, buried in the revolution. My father found a sabbatical position here at the University of Cologne, and I discovered classical homeopathy. Hahnemann tested every remedy on himself, so I started with arnica. Frank, what's going on?
Frank feels a sharp cramp in his bowels. He's going to crap in his pants. A chill attacks his heart. He's going blue in the face. A walrus waiter helps him outside and holds his jaw so Toby can put a sugar ball under his tongue. As the spasms subside, he remembers a sweet moment with Aaron. And 10-15 minutes later, he's watching the red trams clang by, almost normal.
What was that?
I don't know. We just treat the symptoms. The acute picture was arsenicum. The remedy's more a vibration than a material dose. How do you feel?
Okay. Good. We can finish the game.
They return to their table, order another round of Kolsch, shuffle, cut, and play. Hard rocking the pegs around the board.
Wow, Seattle Rock Today, KRAG FM 93.3. You were just watching a gentle rocking motion clip from I'm Carlos Now. That is also a poem from the book Beyond Exile. A gentle rocking motion, deep stuff. It seems, Lawrence, that there's a dark archetype poet hanging over the Frank character, because even playing cribbage, innocently enough, he encounters death, basically.
Well, it's I haven't seen that clip for quite a while. It's I think that's what I try to do with my poetry. I mean, and I, for a second, I can sort of tell your viewers out there that, in a certain sense, what I write is not what people call poetry. It's what they used to call poetry maybe a few centuries ago. But today, poetry is considered entertainment. That people listen to poetry or read poetry to participate in the sharing of emotions and perceptions by a poet, something that they maybe never would have felt before. And that's fine, I enjoy it too. Billy Collins is one of my favorite poets. But that's not what I do. What I do is I epitomize and memorialize important events in my life and the life of my friends, the life of the nation, in order to learn, in order that there's some philosophical progress in experience. It's not just, making money, having entertainment, going on trips and vacations. I mean, it's the philosophy. Poetry is a vehicle for what I want to say. And what I want to say is the philosophy that I've developed over many years. And it's pretty much the philosophy of an outlier, of a revolutionary, of a mutant. I think, in a certain sense, every individual is a mutant. Because particularly today, everyone identifies with a group for advantage, for economic advantage, professional advantage. And no one knows anymore how to be an individual. So that's part of the message.
Well, there's lots of different types of poetry, confessional poetry, the rules of poetry. We have lyrical poetry. But yours is sort of, I would say, trying to shatter the boundaries of what it's supposed to be, somewhere in a song lyric, but it's also just the word on the page. I've often thought of, I guess you call it refined poetry, to be sort of internalized into the poem versus, let's say, a poem that needs you to go outside to collect information like extenuating circumstances, for an example, to solve what does this poem mean. Like, say you talk about like the death of Kennedy and you put that in your poem. Well, if you don't know anything about Kennedy, you can't understand the poem. So I guess in some regards, you could go inside your own word, build your poem brick by brick, or you could use and pull from ideas outwardly and metamorphosize that into your own poetry. It's a very slippery slope. It's a very tricky situation.
Well, it's interesting perspective, Gary. I think probably that's why you mentioned songs, but love songs and love poetry are the most
very difficult.
Very difficult. They're also the most popular and the most accessible, because everyone has had a broken heart. You don't need philosophy or politics to understand having a broken heart or have someone leave you or something like that. So, again, poetry can serve a lot of different. Just saw an owl fly by.
KRAG, we're right next to the
right,
forest.
Just flew right by. Just flew right by.
Yeah. You know, Lawrence, now that we're getting into the third book, The Western Way Institute, we have a copy here, folks, of it that Lawrence is promoting here. And he did a reading in North Bend, and he's going to do one at the Broken Cup, I believe, coming up soon.
Right, if you, which you can, if you have a slice of cherry pie better than Tweeds, I will give you a book.
Well, that sounds like a great
That's a great trade.
A great trade. So you had the first two books Love and Hate and Beyond Exile. But then what was the impetus to bring home the Western way?
Well, the Western way is a different tone altogether, because Love and Hate was let's say, an epic poem about the 60s. Beyond Exile was an epic poem about the 70s. There perhaps was not enough content or interest in the 80s, 90s, and thousands.
I believe that.
To write about. But it doesn't matter, because the impetus for the Western way was to synthesize all of the ideas that I had put in the previous 2 books and in the series I'm Carlos Now in a format that presented the city of Athenopolis. And the city of Athenopolis is in a utopia that has happened, even though, again, the vast majority have not realized it's happening quite yet, and may not for hundreds of years.
I read one of the parts of the book. You actually point to I'm Carlos Now as it exists in our society and refer to a portion of the TV series, the importance of the gold con and conning the business class, the commerce class, into giving away their wealth in a ruse. And what was the impetus? Why was it important to bring down the commerce class?
Well, because all, let's say, military, or, I mean, historically speaking, all bloody revolutions fail because they generally not only cost a great deal of life, but they produce opposite to what their intent was. They would produce a more repressive period of time afterwards. So the idea was that the commerce class, which controls politics and almost all elements of society, most particularly high technology, would not give up power easily or willingly. Obviously not. I mean, they have nuclear weapons, they have police, they have the laws, they have the lawyers, the prisons. Absolutely not. It took them, I mean, several millennia to get power from the noble class and the wisdom class. And now that the commerce class has it, it's going to take a great deal of trickery to get them to let it go. And the way we conceived of that in I'm Carlos Now was the segment called the Gold Con, where a great deal of gold was found on an alien planet. And for merely giving up 51% of the equity of Earth, the business class would give up the power to a new wisdom class that we call the Durbans. That is the structure. That's the structure of this book here.
Yeah, in I'm Carlos Now, it suggested that it's already happened, and that it does happen. It will happen. And this is an example of how it could happen. I don't think it means it's exactly going to happen exactly as it's presented, and in a comedic light, as you'll see in the clip. But it does happen. It will happen. And this is an example of how it could happen. And I think we have tonight, we don't have the whole Gold Con, because we're going to save that for your book and for the TV viewers. But we do have the interesting climax of the Gold Con. And this is where from the alien, from the planet you speak of, comes and talks to the highest ranking member of the business class to sell Earth's equity and Earth's business. And it's got quite a twist, does it not?
Okay, let me add one thing just before you run the clip. And that is that the real power of poetry can be describing a world that has, as you mentioned, either happened, is happening now, or will happen. There's this superposition of past, present, and future, all under the power and aegis of the poet, who is saying, this is how things should be. It's not the corporations and the government officials and their lackeys who say how things could be. It's the poet who should be able to say and legislate how things should be. And if there are a few that listen, then there are a few that listen. And this is the Gold Con is how we did it. It was a trick.
It was a trick, and a very funny trick indeed. And great work here. And folks, if I'm Carlos now, check this one out, folks. This is pretty wild. This is the climax of the Gold Con in I'm Carlos Now. Season 2 episode is called Worse Operations, as you can imagine. Run this, Eileen, the Gold Con climax.
Well, you're not what I expected. Number 7 from the Roddenberry 9. I haven't actually looked at the agreement yet. My people put this together, so I'm going to be run through this really quick, and then we can get started. Let's see. All right. You know, the social media stuff, we've only really been doing that for 20 years on our planet. We don't really even call it social media, we call it social mediocrity. This looks good. This looks good. Looks good. Excellent. And mile marker 6, and told me that the GPS won't pick that up, right? That is true. They're not gonna, that's not on the GPS. Number 6. Oh. Let me check the verbiage here. Boom. Perfect. All right. There's going to be a press conference in about 15 or 20 minutes. Most people get their news from social mediocrity, not from press conferences, but we're going to have one anyway. It's kind of common for Americans to make a grand entrance, so I'm actually going to bring this in, walk in with it, and then, you know, I'll go through this with the press. I'll be back there, and so you don't have to say anything. Is that a deal? Okay. Live long and proper. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here representing their 51% interests. I have an agreement, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with my minute.
This meeting has now been called to order. And now, all corporations exchange 51% of their equity. All nation states cede their political sovereignty to the city of Athenopolis. All nuclear weapons are immediately disarmed and destroyed. And the immediate handing over and destruction of all firearms, so on and so on. Please sign down here. and I sign this here, and that should just about do it. Oh, and there was one other thing. Oh, yes. But besides that, everyone on Earth will get free clothing, housing, and food from now on.
Okay.
Welcome back, Seattle. Oh boy, that was a gold con you just saw here on Seattle Rock Today. KRAG FM 93.3. I could not get enough of watching this this alien who looks just like a kid auditioning for some contractual commercial time.
It's just a little bit of shape-shifting.
Shape-shifting.
Yeah, it's nothing special.
Nothing special. Then that's what the aliens are looking like, folks. That's what they look like. They don't have like 50s Will Robinson. They're not doing anything like that. That's what the aliens are looking like, folks. So they're the ones you got to watch out for, because that's how 51% of all business interests go out the window. Pretty startling there, Mr. Johns, with your poem.
Well, it kind of flashes me back to all the little pieces of gold, all the samples of fake sample gold. Oh, that was a great con. It was a great con, based on Cagliostro, of course. Based on Cagliostro, which the charlatans back in the Renaissance and before, they convinced the commerce class of the time and some of the nobles that they could turn base metals into gold. And of course, if you were destitute or greedy, you sort of put them up for a while in the castle. And the charlatans, they had to move from, leave the castle in the middle of the night. So, no, I think the gold con. In the new book, which has yet to have a title, there is a different interpretation of what actually happened at the Gold Con.
So you're actually, well, you published Western Way, but you're working on a new untitled work.
That's right.
Will this be similar into that, or is this more
it's closer to the ensemble work of Love and Hate. It's kind of more characters. This was a more philosophical synthesis of everything I'd done before, and now it's a fresh start, and you just keep going. And I think the small circle of dedicated readers are waiting for the next, like Moses in Chicago and Clarence in New York. They're waiting to get and of course Louise and John in St. Andrews. They're all waiting for the next book. So,
well, in this book, you're promoting the Western Way. I mean, you talk about synthesis. We mentioned, Frank Glendover is a Nietzschean thinker, and he confessed to that in the series itself. But the book also outlines the other thinkers that have built this foundation
of the Western Way.
Like Schopenhauer, or you have Nietzsche. You even bring in Warhol. You bring a lot of real life individuals, not fictional characters, into the Western Way, and how they influenced you, and how it kind of works together into your Western Way idea.
You mentioned Schopenhauer and Warhol. I think it's important for the individual, for the critical thinker who wants to be an individual, to acknowledge your sources of your view of the world and how you see yourself, but also to acknowledge the opponents of that position, because it's those opponents that will make you stronger, that will make you continuously redefine your position as an individual. If you simply surround yourself with disciples and sycophants, then you'll become a cult. You'll become basically another commercial enterprise. No, you need to always have that dialectic involved with who you are, with who you're not, and those influences. And as we go through life, it's not as if you latch onto a single idea or a single philosophy early on and stick with it like a faith. No. I mean, in my philosophy, there is no faith. You are constantly refining your philosophy by adding and subtracting new skins, new visions, new loves. It's an organic process, and it never stops.
That is the prime focus of the Western way, that this man's not looking for followers. He certainly isn't. This is not a cult. This is just about realizing your individuality and finding that way.
Do it
inside.
yourself.
Yeah.
Don't even do it my way. Don't even do it the Western way.
I'm going to put one more plug on here to the Western Way in the side camera here. You want to get this book, folks. Western Way. This is published by this gentleman right here, Lawrence Johns, Conscious Publishing. Right, you can get this
on Amazon.
You've got the Eastern Way. I'm just going to read you some of the things I pop off the page here. The Eastern Way, Schopenhauer, the Next Man, the V-Dome, the Restoration, the Gold Con, Athenopolis, To Know, Nietzsche, Altizer, Warhol, the Infant God Theory, the Advanced Mind. There's a ton of stuff in here, very rife with information. The Western Way. Thank you, Lawrence Johns, for coming here today. I did have one more little trick up my sleeve for you.
Another one?
Another trick up my sleeve is I happened to find, Eileen, I'll tell him. Eileen happened to find, because she's a big fan of another one of your productions called Parroter. It's a 2-hour film.
An early film, yeah.
It's the third film, the comedy in the trilogy of Red Dream, Caribbean, and Parroter. And she found a clip of Frank back in Haight-Ashbury. He's not actually in it, but in Haight-Ashbury, the Great Fillmore in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And Fillmore in Avalon is this really kind of a hippie, cool little riff here going on.
Okay.
And we thought we'd like to fire this up on the rock show. I know you guys are out there looking for rock all the time. We brought you a little bit of rock. By the way, speaking of that, on Gentle Rocking Motion, that background music you heard was indeed the German supergroup Can from Germany, right, backing that one up. And then here on Fillmore and Avalon, this is the band Athenopolis, which happens to be members of the cast of I'm Carlos Now, form a band. There's a city of Athenopolis, but there's also a band called Athenopolis.
And there's a future called Athenopolis.
And there's a future. So it's a multiverse there, folks. Multiverse is where we are now, let's face it.
Okay.
But let's check out, this is Fillmore and Avalon. This is a poem from the book Love and Hate and appears in the film Parroter. Let's check it out.
waxing blue on auditorium walls. Says everything old is new, and every home is here in a psychedelic fusion of roots and ravishing. Life disarms death and claims this waxy wood for dancing. Tonight, Bill Graham shares a joint with Chet Helms. R. Crumb sketches with Mouse. The diggers shake with the family dog. And the world happily folds itself up like a map in love with its own territory. To join the diggers as they circle the electric fire, listening to their favorite stories, the rage of fair Achilles, and the struggles of a confidence man selling his most dangerous ideas on a steamboat from St. Louis to New Orleans.
Welcome back, folks. Seattle Rock Today, KRAG 93.93 FM. Gary Jean co-hosting the show tonight with Jackson Parker away, and of course our esteemed guest Lawrence Johns traded in his outfit for the this nice little outfit you might wear at Fillmore.
Well, part of my philosophy is always travel with two shirts.
That definitely would work there, Mr. Johns. I tell you what. That was some great stuff. You saw a lot of the early days of the video creation that Lawrence Johns and Paul Flum were putting together there. A little bit more kind of sketchy in the early days versus I'm Carlos now. You saw a lot of this panoramic of these artists, a little bit of Mitchell, a little bit of Garcia, Cipollina, a bunch of these guys who would have been at the Fillmore. Give us a little bit of the Fillmore experience if you can there, Lawrence. And was it, like, how big exactly were things at that time for you in that era?
Well, it's taken on, grandiose proportions of what was going on. But the most important thing is that it was new, it was fun, and after Ken Kesey and the Merrick Branches put on their acid tests, people would drop acid, come and listen, watch the light shows, and you had a huge auditorium to dance.
Wonderful.
So basically, instead of going to a concert, let's say a Beatles concert, and sitting in a chair and listening to 10,000 girls scream, you can go and shake with somebody else.
Shake with a family dog and the Diggers.
Oh, absolutely. You can, it was a happening. It was a happening, and it was fun, and you would meet people, and you'd probably, go out of your mind a little bit. And
I did have one little question about that. The little twist on the end of that poem there, where suddenly it shifts focus, not from the San Francisco and the concert at the Fillmore, but this confidence man who's selling his tricks on a steamboat from St. Louis to New Orleans. I've been trying to do some research and figure that out, and Lawrence, I've not quite figured that thing out. Can you give me some enlightenment about what that's all about?
Of course. It's a literary reference to Melville's book called The Confidence Man. About we talked about personality and identity It's about a confidence man who has all of these different disguises, and has different cons all the way on the steamboat. He's a crippled Negro minstrel. He's a clay eater. He's a minister. It just meant the sort of Dionysian possibility of being anybody you wanted to be.
Mm.
And it also anticipates way forward 15 years the Gold Con.
The confidence men, and there are many. And throughout the storytelling, there's a lot of con jobs going on there.
Well, life itself may be a con job, so you just gotta, take it over.
One of my favorites is Newt Hampson's Wanderer, where a guy literally has a tuning key that you tune a piano with, and he just walks out into the countryside knocking on doors saying, "You got a piano? I'll tune your piano for you for dinner." And let me sleep in the barn for a couple of days. And he's there a couple of days getting more meals because he's like, you know what? Your piano's in trouble, folks. I gotta do some more strings, because if I don't do it, the thing might explode. You know, you don't want that to happen. So
No.
our little wanderer friend, he does that. And,
Well, I think it goes back to the concept of the charlatan. And there was a band called the Charlatans too, one of the early San Francisco bands. And the Charlatans were, I mean, again, it's like Dionysus. You're always moving. You're always changing your identity. You think of all these kids. I mean, they came out of very, very straight world where everything was black and white. All the men wore white shirts and string ties. And there were no colors anywhere. And then suddenly, boom, all of this color, all this excitement. It was, as we've mentioned, there were many downside and dark sides to it. But the flowering, the love, the trust for strangers, the charity, there was a beauty to it.
we don't want to be
really exploded.
The dark. Yeah, we brought a lot of the darkness in the beginning of the show about that scene to let you know what really was going on, and Lawrence's writing there that wasn't always let you know. But ultimately, we want to go out with a nice little talk about the kind of the beauty of it all.
Oh yeah,
it was the Monterey Pop, of course, is another example of the beauty of the time.
Right. No, it's as I mentioned earlier,
the kids believed in revolution, did they not?
They did, and it's important to remember it the way it was, not the way it gets reinterpreted, because current historians, or let's say video people, they think of the hippies and those eras as something silly, something stupid, without all of the spiritual and revolutionary fervor that it engendered. Because the idea then was anything is possible. That anything I hope to carry on in my poetry so people can put it into their own lives as they see fit.
Well, thank you very much, Lawrence. And
it's been a pleasure being here.
Lawrence will be at the Broken Cup, reading a little bit of Western Way there. What's left on your schedule for your trip?
I have two performances at the Broken Cup, and then I'm going down to San Francisco at the Hungry Eye. And then I'm going to go to, if I'm not mistaken, I go to LA at, there's a deli.
Not Katz's Diner.
Cantor's.
Oh, yeah.
Cantor's Deli.
You get the Thanksgiving dinner there.
And I'm doing a little poetry reading on the side.
The kibitz room.
In the bar, in the kibitz room.
Yeah, absolutely. You might see the Swami there, too.
Right. That turkey dinner is unbelievable.
You got to get the turkey dinner.
You got to get the turkey
Next door to
dinner.
the kibitz room if you're down in LA.
That's it. Okay.
Well, it's been a great show. Thank you all, Lawrence John. So that everybody, thanks for calling in. We got you the guy who put out, along with Paul Flum. I'm Carlos now, here in the flesh. Look forward to next week. Jackson Parker should be back in the studio. I want to thank Eileen for putting those clips together. A great night. Any final words, Lawrence?
No, it's great to be here. When's Jackson coming back?
He's very comfortable in somewhere in the Mediterranean. So
Oh, is he now? Okay.
when he gets the urge to return to Seattle, his seat will be ready.
I'm a big fan of Jackson Park.
Well, we all are here.
I mean,
He's an institution here in Seattle.
I mean, he is a personality. Woo!
Personality.
Crazy.
That's it tonight,
Okay.
folks. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.